Put on a Ike mini flip.
It's a little out of that. Good one on a frog.
Oh my gosh, how big his mouth is. To be a 4-pounder, if that thing had a gut, that's like a 5 or a 6.
All right, everybody. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. We had this going live at first and ran into a total issue there for a second. I don't know what happened, but everything happened. That's what happened. So as I was trying to get it straight, Ronnie Moore was coming in, and then never mind. Sorry, I was reading a message from him. Anyways, we had him on here, had all kinds of difficulties going. So we're getting them in, and hopefully here soon. I want to thank all of our sponsors that has helped us out with this show before we get into this interview with Ronnie. Waterland Eyewear. I want to thank Missile Baits. I want to thank Amped Outdoor. 3 great companies that has been there for us through thick and thin and everything. So I really appreciate them guys. I would have my Waterlands on today, but I got a funny story for that later to tell you why I don't have them on. So, but I do want to thank them so much for all that they've done for us. It's been a blessing to have them. All 3 companies help support us. And if you can, please go support them because they support us as well. So if you're just tuning in, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. 2 YouTube channels. We got One Objective Bass Fishing and One Objective Outdoors. Outdoors is where all our bass fishing content, hunting, full wheeling, all that stuff's going to. It's a new channel. We're really close to 1,000 subscribers, so make sure you please hit that subscribe button over there as well. And then also our One Objective Bass Fishing. That's where all of our installs are for kayak accessories, motor mounts, bass boat accessories, all that stuff. So, but got some tournament news after this interview with Ronnie. How me and Chris did this weekend in an event. Finally got on some fish, so we're going to talk about that afterwards. But before we get into all of that, I want to go ahead and get Ronnie in here. Hey man, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on? How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Sorry about that earlier, man. Everything it was like chaos, just hit all at one time.
Hey, trust me, being in the media industry, I completely understand tech problems.
Yeah, everything was fine. I had sound, and then all of a sudden I had nothing. And I was like, what in the world is going on here? So I do appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy time right now. I know you guys are busy. This is y'all's time of year to shine and covering the elites and all that stuff. So I really appreciate you taking the time. But I did want to, before we kind of get in and talking about the elites, a lot of guys that I'm sure most of these guys, most of our followers follow Elite Series, know who you are, know that the brains behind, I'm going to say behind the operations of all the stats. Like you always got amazing stats. And I'm kind of jealous because I'm like, I love bass fishing. I love it a lot. And I do not know half, not even close to half of the stuff that you talk about. So it's pretty cool. But let's let everybody know who you are, like where you come from. What got you into this, where you're at right now in your life?
Well, I'll just go ahead and I like to say, who I am and then what I do and where I came from. So if I was to introduce myself to you guys, maybe to your viewers and fans and to you yourself, I would classify myself as Ronnie Moore, child of God, follower of Christ. And then what I do is I'm one of the co-hosts, one of the hosts of Bassmaster Live for anything live bass fishing that we do at Bassmaster. And along the lines of that as well, my Monday through Friday deal when we're not live, or my Monday through Wednesday, if it's an elite event or whatever the case may be, is I'm one of the video editors at JM Outdoors. JM Outdoors is the production company of Bassmaster that puts the TV show on. That's why Bassmaster's headquarters is in Birmingham and the studio is in Little Rock. That is JM Outdoors, is Jerry McInnes Outdoors, and that's what he started all those years ago. So I work for JM under the Bass umbrella, but everything I do is Bassmaster related. So on camera, behind the computer editing, I run our YouTube channel exclusively, and then obviously all the content I make that may go on YouTube is pumped to the website first and foremost. So I've dabbled in writing, editing, on camera, audio, photography, everything with Bassmaster, the live leaderboard with Bass Track over my time. This is my 11th year with BASS. My 11th year. I started in 2014. while I was still in college. I went to East Carolina University over in Greenville, North Carolina. And North Carolina is where I would consider home. That's where I would call it home. I was born in Florida and lived there for 5 or 6 years with my family. We moved to North Carolina, and I spent like the next 18 years there before moving to Little Rock. And that's where I've been in Little Rock since 2017. So it's been a great journey. But yeah, where I come from is East Carolina University. Went to journalism school there, got my degree, and while I was doing that, I was fishing all the college series events on a national level, competing with some of my closest friends that are now either on the Elite Series, they're on the NPFL, they're fishing, with the former FLW, the current MLF, and so it's been cool to see them segue and try to pursue a career in that. And I never really got to pursue the fishing side of it because I got a job while I was a junior in college. I didn't get to jump out and fish the opens when I graduated. There was, obviously a conflict of interest. I didn't want to fish any other trail. I wanted to fish with BASS. So working with them and fishing would not have worked out. So I chose the route I chose, and boy, the Lord has blessed me in all 11 years and paved my way for where we are today, which is very cool.
That's awesome because, I know when I was younger, I wanted to be a professional fisherman so bad. And like, my dad's always like, boy, that's hard work. You got to have a backup plan, and when you get a backup plan and then, you get married and you got kids and, not blaming none of them for it. It's just the path the Lord led us down, but, I always prayed. I was like, man, I just want to be in the fishing industry. Like at that point, I'm like, I know I'm not going to make it as a pro, but I would love to make it in the fishing industry. And, he's opened doors for us to give us the ability to do that and to have these conversations with you guys as well, too. And it's just crazy how it all works out. You know what I mean? Like how, it's something you love so much. It don't feel like work now. You know what I mean? When you're.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's been a blessing, and I've seen the Lord put put me in front of people, give me the opportunities, and because of the career, they wouldn't have called me otherwise, or I wouldn't have been in front of this group of people unless I was in the fishing industry. And so it's been absolutely phenomenal. And man, there's just so much about this sport that you can get into. It is a small sport in general. The industry's somewhat small, but if you want to do marketing, if you want to do the tech side of things, development, if you want to do finances, sales, whatever it is, social media for people, there's hundreds of opportunities, thousands of opportunities out there. And it's really all about the people that you meet along the way. I got my opportunity in 2014, starting at the Bassmaster Classic at Lake Gunnersville. And I always will attribute that opportunity to college fishing, going to Bassmaster events, having the opportunity to talk on stage. And whether me and my partner caught 20 pounds or we caught 3 pounds, I was always positive and hopeful, because we know how it is. You could go out today and catch nothing, tomorrow catch the biggest bag of the tournament. So there was always hope in my voice and opportunity on the stage to talk. And people, connect the dots and say, well, this guy represents himself, somewhat well. And then he catches them decent. He's knowledgeable to a certain extent. And then his degree is in this and he's passionate about the sport. Well, let's just give him a ring. And so I always like to joke that, like, whenever I retire, if it's 50 years with BASS, whatever it is, I never applied for a job. Like they asked me and I just sent them my resume when they asked, and boom, we're like, here we are, and then it's like 11 years. They're like, a couple years of freelance. They say, hey, you want to come to Little Rock and do the video side of our website and control that. And I was like, heck yeah. And they were like, also, you'll be on Bass Live. And I was like, oh, that's totally cool. That's fine. And then the second I got here, I was like, I don't want to do anything but be on Bass Live. Like, I literally just that ended up being, that was the secondary, that was the 1B. And then all of a sudden it was like, this is something I can do. But the first year or two wasn't easy. It was bumpy, trying to figure out who you are behind the mic when you're sitting beside Tommy Sanders and Mark Zona and people you've looked up to, and you try to be other people. So I had to just settle in and be myself, had to be the passionate guy that knew the numbers, that might have been 22, 23 years old, but knew stuff back in the 70s and 80s. And so I just leaned into that and connected the dots with numbers, seasonal patterns, types of lakes. It ends up developing a lot I can, you can project where a tournament may go or how it could be won, or, well, every year it's like this or that. And so the St. Johns River is as crazy and different as it can be year to year, grass, no grass. That one is a lot easier to call on expectations, and we can get into that later, obviously. But like, I knew certain things, not just necessarily where it would be won, but like when we're going to see a giant bag come across the stage, when we're going to see a big bass come across the stage, those types of things. When you line up multiple events in a row over year after year, all of a sudden you have a pattern of predictability. So it's been fun. But yeah, just turned 30, so I guess I'm not a young kid anymore on the crew.
No, you're not the young buck no more.
I'm trying to get a couple young bucks back in the fold. We let a couple skirt away to Birmingham to be a part of the headquarters group there on the website, and trying to steal a couple back. Not steal. They'll still work for the team. They just play a different position,
Yeah. Was it intimidating when you first went in there with Zona and Tommy Sanders and all of them? I mean, like say you watch these guys forever, and to go in, I mean, did you have much of a relationship with them before, like, or was it just straight into the studio? Hey guys, here I am.
I think that compared to just random Joes, like I knew them a whole lot more. I did work, 3 years on the water covering tournaments before I came and did studio. So for Bass Live. So I did 2014 season while I was a junior in college, 2015 when I was a senior, and obviously halfway through the season I graduated. And so I started being able to travel more. And then 16 was my first full year out of school. And so I was at all the events. They would do phoners for Bass Live while I was on the water, and I would give them updates. And so we knew each other. And then I felt more comfortable around them because I met them years ago. I met them with my dad. We went to the Lake Bassmaster Classic 2010 when it was the beeswax. Everybody was in beeswax. It was frigid and KVD1 in the back of beeswax. And my dad always taught me when we go to NHRA races or NASCAR or fishing tournaments, like there's going to be a big crowd wanting to talk to these people. And if you're just patient, that crowd will dissipate. Or that might be a big word for my dad. The crowd will leave, and if you hang patient and stay steady, all of a sudden whoever you're trying to meet is going to come out because there's 10 people or 5 people or 2 people instead of 100 people. So he taught me patience, and at that classic, they did the hooked up stage straight to ESPN those nights of the final weigh-ins, and it was 9:00 at night or whatever, and we're standing there, and I'm like 13, 14, 15, whatever it is. And finally the crowd had departed, and the show had ended, and they were packing up and fixing to leave. And they walk off the set and come over and say, hey, and I mean, I think I called Zona. I said, Mr. Mark. I always called every adult I met Mr. or Mrs. and their first name. I never did last names. And so Mr. Mark, Mr. Tommy, and I shook their hand. I was like, I would love to work with you guys one day. And they gave me I always tell this story, and I love it because it's now a responsibility I have. But they're always like, work hard, kid, and you never know where you'll get in life. You never know. One day maybe you'll work with us. And so all those years later, I think I was sitting in the boat with Zona shooting photos for one of his shows. And like for 30 minutes in the boat in the morning, I didn't say anything. And he's like, Ron, you okay? And we had already known each other, but I hadn't done a Zona show with him yet. And so I was sitting there and I was like, I did it. And he's like, did what? And then I told him the whole story about me being a kid. And I said, I want to work with you and do something on your show one day. And so it was very cool. But I knew Tommy and them. And then Tommy also came to the college series events for the championship at least. And so I met him on the dock and I talked to him. My parents obviously were there. And so we knew Tommy Sanders pretty good. And so when I graduated from the college series and I had worked for the elites for a year and a half, immediately they were like, hey, do you want to come do college TV with us on ESPNU for the shows? And so I got my first introduction to college, sports there doing that, before I turned 21. Maybe it was like the week after I turned 21, something like that. But like right after graduation, I got to be on TV with Tommy, and then Bass Live came a year and a half later. And I'd say the only thing that was intimidating is when you have a guy like Tommy who's been in it 40 years and he's the voice, the legend that is Tommy Sanders. And he's obviously been with BASS for 20 something years. That I always got to come prepared, ready, correct when I'm with Tommy, because he's not going to drop the ball. And then with Zona, I said I couldn't be a stand-up comedic. I'm not just a one-liner guy on the mic. But if I get a round table of friends, I'll end up being the funniest guy at the table. We'll roast each other, whatever. And so Zona's got that same type of deal. And so trying not to be just like him and then try to be professional like Tommy, I was in the middle of like, I'm this kid trying to prove my worth. Tommy's super mature and respected in the industry, and Zona's knowledgeable and a competitor, and he's got his personality. And I was trying to do both, and I couldn't do it. So that was the real tough thing. That was intimidating. But once you start to do well, then that it's that's the standard that they set. So I got to lean in and be more comfortable.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's get to a couple here real quick. Dwayne says, hi, Ronnie. Good seeing you, buddy.
What's up, Dwayne?
Bob Brisky, he was at the Bassmasters Classic. He was a very cool opportunity to meet you.
Oh, yeah.
So Bob's on our team as well. So he represented us well. Really proud
That's
of
awesome.
Bob.
That is awesome.
But no, kind of getting into it. And now that, you talk about your friends, you see a lot of your friends that's moved into the elites and FLW and all that stuff, and kind of being in the position you're in now. I mean, is there a side now that you're kind of like, man, I'm glad I didn't try to go be a pro, or are you like, I'm happy because I got comfort? You know what I mean? Like,
hey, I'll say I don't fish anymore. I'm trying to currently sell my boat. So here's my pitch: buy my boat. It's been sitting here for a year and a half, and she's under a covered area, and she's all cute and pretty, and needs a good home. But I'm a competitor through and through. And I'll say this, like, I didn't grow up fun fishing with my dad. Every time I went to the lake with my dad, I was his team partner, or he was practicing for a tournament. And I was like, we were in five bass mode. Like, it's 3:00 on a fun fishing day, quote unquote. And we're like, we would have had to leave right now to make it to weigh-in on time. And we would have only had 3 fish, or we would have had 12 pounds, so I've always been in tournament mode. So it wasn't like I remember those quiet days on the lake of just catching a bass, and you hear a frog splash in the water and the bird flies by, and I love bass fishing. Now it was like, I want to smell the oil and the smoke from the motors, and I want to be holding the handles in the passenger seat, running as fast as we can. And so that's the bass fishing I know. So It's hard for me to leave. And I segue that as I want to be a dad way more than I wanted to be an Elite Series pro. And so now that we have a little one, that's who I looked over at. She just ran up here to say, hey, when I was doing this. Now that we have a little one, and we have a little one on the way, my place is here at home when I get the chance. So that's why I've stopped fishing for the most part. I get my fill of fishing every day at work and on live. I see it, I feel it, I live it. The emotions come up of what that would be like to be in those positions. But I do see the success Patrick Walters has had, Jake Whitaker, Drew Cook, even on the MPFL, Trent Palmer is one of my best friends. Mike Corbishley, I fished with him as a partner at East Carolina in college. And a lot of these guys, we fished against each other in college throughout the time. And, Justin Atkins, like Shane LeHue, all these different guys have fished against them. And I didn't do terrible. And I had an 18-foot Ranger with shorted out graphs, and I had my Maps app on my phone that had my waypoint in the pocket. So I was holding it up, running 51 miles an hour, wide open, making it to spots, and we still competed. And so I can at least, if I never fish another tournament again, I can look back and be like, I knew enough to hold my own, or maybe I didn't know enough, and that was just the Lord's grace of like giving me success. But I had enough success, and I met enough people that I wouldn't trade my life that I have now at all. And people always do that. I make 70,000. I wish I made 100,000. That's not real numbers for me, but just an example of like, well, with that 100,000 means you work extra hours, and you maybe have to work weekends, and you miss your family. So like, I don't ever want to ask for more wealth or more prominence or stature, because that means something's got to give. And so losing family time or being on the road more, that's one big determining factor of me moving. Was if we wanted to start a family, me and my wife, like when we come to Little Rock, you're meaning I'm not having to travel 50,000 miles a year for tournament bass fishing out, just 50,000 for tournaments. And then whatever it is, traveling elsewhere. So getting to come home every day to the family is the goal. So I miss tournament fishing some. But man, I love being a dad way more and doing Bass Live, no doubt about it.
Yeah, to be competitive, especially like let's think about the EQs right now. I mean, to qualify just to get on the elites, I mean, you got to be all in. You know what I mean? And these guys away. And luckily, you look, it's a lot of younger guys that don't really have families yet, and a couple of them do. But to be all in, it's tough. And I traveled and did a lot of the Bass kayak stuff and the Hobie kayak stuff. And man, for 2 years we were gone. I missed birthdays, and I finally, me and James, like, man, I'm not doing this no more. I missed too many. It ain't gonna be long. They're gonna be grown and have their own.
And there'll be another season. Like if I sell this boat, there'll be another season in 5, 6, 7 years that I could get another boat, and we could take the kids fishing and teach them all about it like I did. And so it's always that. My least favorite thing on the internet is seeing people say, well, these kids don't have to sacrifice anything, or they're so young, they don't even have families yet. Well, that's their sacrifice.
Yeah.
Some of these people sacrifice the family dynamic, which in the long term means way more than the fishing success would. So you're a 20, 22, 24, 25, 27-year-old person, and you're spending 30 weeks gone from your hometown. It's hard to have relationships, and it's hard to develop those family ties. And it even fractures probably your current family because you're never home to see things and you miss things. And so there's plenty of sacrifices. There are plumbers or oil workers that can catch bass to the level of the Elite Series, but they're not willing to sacrifice some portion of their life to go do that. They're not willing to sacrifice the baseball games for their kids to go do that.
Yeah.
They're not willing to sacrifice I've got a good thing going. I sell insurance at home, and that's a solid paycheck. Like you were saying, you want to have a backup plan, or people want you to have a backup plan. You cannot be a successful Elite Series pro with a backup plan. If you got 1 foot in bucket B, 1 foot in bucket A, you can never fully see bucket A come to fruition. You're never going to fully see how good you could do on the elites until you go all in. And then bucket B is always going to be pulling you home. I had a bad event. I got to rush home and work. I got to do this. So it's when you make that, I'm going to just go all in and do it. Justin Hamner stopped mowing lawns so that when he came home from tournaments, he could spend time with family and wasn't trying to go make some money elsewhere. He goes and makes like 8 or 10 cuts in a row and then wins the Bassmaster Classic. Like,
yeah,
it's only when you fully put your hope and faith and trust into this call or this plan when you see it come to fruition. Yeah,
exactly.
Same thing with what I do. 100%. People all the time say, and I bless their heart. I get to be a little cocky, right? Bless their heart. Dude, I can catch bass better than Ronnie. I could do Bass Live and talk about that. And I said, there are very few people in the world that can talk for 8 hours in a row and have the just be prepared and do it. And then if they could, you couldn't hold a candle to the Monday through Friday that I do to make the engine run, or, like you just have no idea till you're doing it, how much other people are doing behind the scenes to make their dream come true. And so it's long nights, early mornings, and I don't lose my voice that much, but it's scary when you're at church and the bug's going around and your kid's going to bring home something. Am I going to get sick during Bass Live this week? It's a tough one.
Dropping the vitamin D and all that stuff.
I think we did some voiceover work for the classic show for Gussie's win last year. And I delayed the show all the way until 4 p.m. I was like, if it's going to take an hour to do this instead of 9 a.m., let's push it to 4 p.m. And I gargled hot salt water every 15 minutes all day. And I had just enough voice to do that hour. And even on the show, people were like, dang, give Ronnie the day off. He's losing his voice. Like I I was doing my best to like, I got to do it. We got to get this show cut for a fog. I got to do it. And you're like gargling salt water all day to figure it out.
Now, are you one of them guys that can read something and just retain it immediately? Because I got friends that are like that, and to know the stats that you have. Now, granted, I know it's your job, but you also got to have a passion for it. And I mean, heck, I make motor mounts and build motor mounts for kayaks and rig kayaks. But there's things I forget on a daily basis, and I have to keep looking back to my notes. And I'm like, how do you remember so much? I mean, is it just a lot of pre-work before the show, that kind of refresh your memory? Or
man, I like to my detriment, sometimes I see like everything. Like, for instance, the Opens, Andy Newcomb, he's in the top 10 in points. He's an Ozarks guy, never fished with BASS till the Open last year at the Ozarks. And then he goes, like, I knew Andy's name from seeing BFL headlines years ago. Like, I just knew that he was just a hammer at that lake. And when I see him in the tournament, I'm like, uh-oh, like this could be, and then he's in the top 10, and then I meet him, and it's just like, it clicks. And I do retain a lot of stuff that I could just see. I saw something in a report, or I saw an angler in the standings. And so when people, like, I always feel like this, I knew everyone in high school. Not everyone in high school knew me. That's how I like to put it. I knew who you were and what clique you were in, even if you didn't know me. And so, and I wouldn't say it's photographic memory, but man, I could, more times than not, if I'm like unsure and I throw a stab, I take a stab at it, I've got 3/4 of that fact correct, and I missed out on the ounces. I got the pounds and ounces and the person and the lake and the time of year, but I can tell you who got third because I remember he lost a fish on the final day. Like it's super weird. But I always tell people, I wish I got to offload some. Maybe when I hit 2025, I'll offload some 80s knowledge so I could retain some more. Or like if I'm trying to remember a Bible verse, I'm like, dude, why do I know about Guido Hibden in the 1987? I need to remember this verse. Like why am I forgetting this? But I can remember that. And so there's some mice and some filing cabinets in there. There's some fires and they're trying to find it, but I will say, it's a lot of work, and seeing so many things I can pull from that in the middle of a sentence. I'll just be talking and Tommy will say something. I had something prepared to say in response. And then all of a sudden he's like, you just reminded me, remember when? And then we, like it's most of that's from being a fan. My parents will know when I moved out, they probably burned 900, spiral notebooks that had NASCAR and basketball stats and football numbers. I used to fill the 200-page spiral notebooks just with stats. I'd watch a game on mute and I'd keep stats of, I'd line up my NASCAR Matchbox cars in the floor, walk out of the room. My dad would turn one around and I walk in and be like, would you stop touching? And I go over there straight to it and do it. Like I'd notice immediately. So I had notebooks. And so I always say this, Josh, like literally, I'm a huge basketball fan. It'd be hard for me to ever leave Bass. But if I did it for another commentary thing, it'd be like if the NBA called me and asked me to broadcast, because I just love basketball. And honestly, it's kind of a waste. I know so much about basketball that I don't ever have the chance to use. Like as soon as we end the podcast, I'm going to be watching my Nuggets tonight, try to win game 3. And so I keep up with that just as much. And so I always say, we're going to go to a basketball game, Sarah, which is my wife. And when I'm going to see on Twitter that one of the announcers has got the flu and they're going to be only 2 broadcasters instead of 3. And I'll be like, hey, here's my resume. It's on my phone. Like plug me in. We ready to go? And that's my dream, is I'm going to be able to call an NBA game one day. And that's the scenario. And that might be my only one, but I always, that's the deal. And so
waiting for that guy to get sick. You're like, man,
100%.
But,
hey,
Bob's got a question here. He says, what handful of Elite Series guys do you think are underrated, aren't covered enough? Guess none of them are truly underrated, but
maybe. I think Bob, I I think he's been looking at my social media because yesterday I posted this, and it's a little chart I made. I don't know if it's going to focus on it or not, but it says which Bassmaster Elite Series angler comes to mind, and it's got a chart and a tall graph that says ability/talent, and then the other one is 2 little blocks that says recognition. So it's like who's got the ability and who, but they don't get talked about a bunch. The couple of people that come to mind, I'll probably list like 6 or 7. I think Jay Shakurit, he's a young guy from the north, wins an Elite Series event in his rookie year, and it's on smallmouth. We automatically cornered him as being a smallmouth guru. That might be true, but boy, does he catch him on tough rivers, catches him in the big moments of the Classic. He's gotten 2 top 10s in the back-to-back Classics at 2, tough Highland bodies of water in the Tennessee River out of Knoxville and Grand Lake this past year. He's done his part through the opens as a co-angler and a boater, and his dad has taught him how to be a professional. So I think he is one of the guys. I think that Matt Airy, Stetson Blaylock, those are 2 guys that are more veteran. He's a younger guy. They're more veteran. That, man, they're just rock solid. Brandon Cobb's probably in that, but we did start to see Brandon Cobb won 2 elites in a single season, and he almost won AOY last year. Like, we talk about him and we know him. We're not, he is feared. Like, he's up there. And so if he was if he gets a little too much recognition to fall in that category, his roommate Shane LaHue doesn't. So I would say Shane would be in that category instead of him.
Yeah.
Let me think of some others. Some people said like Cooper Gallant. I get it for sure. I try to leave some young guys off. A lot of guys said some rookies, in that post that I made. A rookie we haven't had enough time to give them enough recognition. We've given the whole class a ton of pub this year, but they've only fished 4 elites. They haven't had enough time to show how good their talent is on a longer, sustainable thing to where we're like, okay, we need to start talking more about that guy. They're 4 events in, like, until, like, we haven't, you've possibly fished. There are anglers who have fished 8 days of competition this year. That's how early we still are, even though we're almost halfway. I'd say, who else was on that list that I really agreed with? I shared him on my story today. Let me see. Steve Kennedy gets brought up a lot. And I think that Kennedy doesn't get enough recognition because he doesn't do media well.
Yeah.
And I don't think that he wants recognition. He just does it differently, but he is one of those guys. I'm getting texts. My Arizona Cardinals just picked Marvin Harrison Jr. So we got our guy at 4. I said it this morning
on tonight.
I said, yeah, they got the draft, you got the NBA, and we're doing bass fishing, baby. But I said earlier today, I said, okay, Cardinals, we haven't had a star wide receiver in a year, and we saw how bad that year was. Go get your guy. Don't do anything cute. Don't trade the pick for 2 other picks. Get your guy, and then we can make some trades later. So we got our guy, Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's go. And I hate Ohio State, but let's go. Some more. I'll name 3 more quick ones. Somebody said Jacob Porosnik and Hunter Shryock. I see that. Hunter's getting better at smallmouth, so I'll put him in that. And then Jacob, man, he is top notch. He's been top notch for a while. I'm waiting to see him contend for AOY and in the elites. I don't know why that hadn't been a thing, in the last few years. But and then the last one was Austin Felix.
Yeah,
I think some of those guys. So a lot of those are northern type of guys or quiet guys in general that aren't going to ever, they're not going to do the podcast spree unless somebody reaches out to them. They're going to do social media the way they want. Most of the time they go home and hang with their family and don't say much. And so I think that's what tends to get people talked about less, but man, they're deadly. They're the guys who anchor fantasy fishing teams.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? When I used to go and do a lot of the Bassmaster just for the classic stuff, the media for hours, and Jacob Prosnick, I always like to interview him, but it was crazy. He every once in a while he just have 1 or 2 guys that come up to an interview with him. You know what I mean? He catch a good bag, but he still only had 1 or 2 guys that come up to an interview with him. And he does really good interviews. It's just he's kind of that quiet guy. You don't get up there and say much. And Steve Kennedy's the same way. They make gains and they do well. They just, you don't hear about them much. But yeah, they're two good ones. let's talk. I don't want to hold you a whole lot longer. I know you
No,
got.
you're totally fine. Yeah, I got to do bath time in a minute. So if
Yeah.
I was gonna propose this. If you wanted to continue to talk, it's totally cool for me to step out for 5 minutes and I'll come back. But yes,
Yeah.
we can wrap up whenever you want as well.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask you one more thing here, and granted, I might have to let you go because it could be a long, it could be a long conversation because I know it's a hot topic with the forward facing sonar and the rookies
Okay.
and all that stuff. But I can kind of go over my tournaments I had for this weekend if you want to step away for a little bit. If you
Yeah,
got
I think so. I think my wife would be happy. I'm gonna go read our verse of the day with the girl, and then and let her jog around in a circle real quick, and then I'll be back maybe like 10 minutes tops.
that sounds good, man.
Awesome.
We'll get
I'll
you.
go in the back. Yeah, can you pull me in the background and then bring
sir.
me back in?
Yep.
Awesome. I'll be right back.
All right, guys. Hope you guys are liking the interview so far. If you are, hit the thumbs up button, hit the like button, share it. Let's get this out there. I appreciate everybody that's tuning in right now. But let's share it. Let's get more people in here because I want to talk about the forward facing sonar. I want to talk about his take and what the future of the sport's looking like with this, and see what he has to say. And I know he's got a lot going on. He's a family man. He's got a lot going on with his kids and all that stuff. But Bob says, "Don't tell me what to do, Josh. Do it, Bob. Don't make us look bad." That's what I told Bob before he went to the Bassmasters Classic. I said, "Good luck. Don't make us look bad." And he didn't. He did a phenomenal job. But before he gets back in here, I want to cover a little. I just want to talk a little bit about the tournament me and Chris had this weekend because it was a super fun tournament. We didn't win. We had a good finish. I feel like we had a good finish. I think we was like 5th or 6th or something like that. But it was just fun fishing. Like they were on beds, they were cruising, they were everywhere. And I had a practice day, and this video is gonna be coming out soon. We actually just released James's video on the Yupin River, or I don't know how you say it. It's one of the crazy name rivers, but it's down there in North Carolina, and they all kind of dump into the same river system. Hey, Steve, what's going on? Hey, I know you're just tuning in. Ronnie Moore's gonna come right back on and join us here in a little bit. He had to go just for a second. We still got him in the studio. He's gonna be back here in just a little bit, guys. If everybody's just tuning in, Ronnie Moore will be back on just a little bit. But anyways, we had a fun event, and like I say, I find this is the first weekend that I've had the chance to do the throw the Berkeley Nessie. I've had these in my boat for a while, and I said, man, I'm gonna put this thing on. I want to win one of these events, and I've been close maybe once or twice when I used to fish with this club series years ago. It's some hammers in it, man. There's some good sticks in this series, and I still look up to a lot of these guys, and some of these guys are the same age as me, and I look up to them. I've learned a lot from them. So to be able to compete and be right there with them at that level of fish and all that stuff, it was really fun. But during practice, I took that Nessie, and I ended up finding some school of fish in the back of a pocket. And while I was on the phone with James, I ended up catching a 4-pounder and another one right around 3 off of it. And I was like, all right, I got to leave this thing alone. Like, this is some good call. But when I called them, I had several of them that were, it was 6 or 7 that was with each one when I brought it in of the same size. They were big fish. And you look on the graph, you see more down there. And I wasn't live scoping these fish. I was just casting out. It's super shallow back there. I wasn't trying to live scope them with all the bait fish and clutter that was in the water. But was able to catch 2 off that Nessie. But the cool thing about that Nessie, and this is some tips for guys that are in bed fishing, and I know Bob and all of them in Florida, they ain't worried about bed fishing no more. They're past that. But I'm gonna tell you what, that Nessie is a phenomenal search bait when you're looking for them on beds. You throw that thing, you can bomb it out there and just work it in real slow, and they're gonna come up off that bed. Especially like Smith Mountain, there's a lot of laydowns, there's a lot of docks. And with the laydowns and the docks, sometimes it's hard to see depending on how the shade hits or the waves or whatever. Or they get back in these laydowns and they're hard to see. So we were going behind people that were looking for bedding fish that were going, just wide open. And I was throwing this Nessie out, and they'd come up and you'd see them. And I marked several of them. I had a couple 3s that were marked that we caught that were on beds, and was able to go back and catch them. But like I say, phenomenal bait. The Nessie, I highly recommend you getting that. And tying that on, especially when they're on beds right now. I'm sure it's phenomenal in other ways, but man, it was a great search bait for me. I loved that bait. I also threw around a big swim bait, which I had some follows on that as well. I threw a buzz bait around. Chris threw a whopper plopper, caught his first one of the year off of it. I know Chris was super excited, man. It was fun to see him catching some fish because Chris has been having he's been on a struggle bus. Chris, you know, you've been on a struggle bus here lately, just trying to get fish, and he finally got them. He started catching more fish. So I was happy to see Chris getting some fish in the boat, and we were learning a lot with some of these bedding fish. And but Chris did good. I was super happy. I think he was happy too. He was helping make a difference. We was putting fish in the box, and but we were both netting. I did learn this weekend that I'm not a good net man. I don't know if it's just I haven't done it a lot for other people because either I'm fishing by myself or the kids or whatever. You know, I don't fish. I haven't fished with a lot of different people lately, and I was like, man, Christy, so you got to work on your netting skills, buddy. I said I don't do it a lot. I don't do it a lot. So Chris, you're good. You're good in netting. Just let you know. Just playing, man. But no, I had a good time. We got out there. We caught. I think it was close to 13. I think it was. I can't remember what my weight was now. Like maybe no, it was like 12.5, something like that. You know, you're riding around like, man, I really need a big fish. You know, I need a 4-pounder to get me to that next level of culling. Because I had another one in there that was like a 1.9 or something like that. So if I could have got a 3 or a 4, I'm not saying I would have won by no means, but I would have got in a better position than what I was. But you know, it was fun. We had a good time. Caught lots of fish. There's going to be a good video that's going to be coming out with that. For everybody that's just tuning in right now, we're going to have Ronnie Moore back on here in just a minute. We talked for a little while. We'll have part 2 coming up with Ronnie Moore in a little bit. He's taking care of some family stuff right at the moment. But if you're just joining in, hit the like button, hit the share button. Let's get some more people in here. And that way we can, you know, get Ronnie some more questions. Also, if you haven't checked out One Objective Outdoors, our new YouTube channel, we're close to 1,000. We're really close to 1,000. So subscribers. So if you haven't yet, go hit that subscribe button, man. It means a lot to us. It means a lot for us to get those subscribers in there. And let's see, Stephen Hatfield, most of the weight we had in our tournament didn't come from beds. Yes and no. I've talked to a few of those guys. A lot of guys were catching fish deep on beds. A lot of smallmouth were coming deep on beds. But some of those fish, yeah, I mean, at the lower end, there was big fish up on the beds. I mean, we had a couple big ones that we caught the bucks off the bed, and the females would not load up. Like they kind of weirded out, man. They'd pull off or they would make longer circles. Like, you know, you wouldn't see them for a while, then you come back, and we'd leave them alone and come back, and they just still wouldn't. It was tough to get them, but like a lot, you know, we had, I think 16, 17 pounds that one ours event. And it was, you know, several of those were off beds, but the bed fishing is a little different this year on Smith Mountain. I mean, I went around, I've seen a lot on beds. I've seen a lot of open beds with no fish on it, whether they're caught or they either made the bed and pulled back off because we did have some kind of weird weather that came in. But, you know, we had a full moon this Wednesday. Wednesday, I think it was, or Tuesday. We had a full moon. I know that did another big wave of fish coming up on beds. A lot of people feel like they've already spawned out, which, you know, if you look at some of these fish that were caught, they look like they have spawned out. So I don't know if a lot of them just, you know, that time of the year, they're like, you know, they're doing it. They're going to do their deed. And maybe a lot of them spawn deeper, you know, and they've already got over that. I mean, the shad spawn's going to start happening. I mean, it's going on now from what I understand. But guys, striper fishermen I've been talking to said that they've been catching a lot of stripers up there on the banks. So I'm really curious to see. We got night tournaments going to kick in here soon. I think Steven, don't hold me to it, but is it next week? Is it next week or the week after? The 9th is our Thursday nighters when they start up. So excited to get those going on. And, you know, I was talking about doing this show more on Thursday nights, but I think that's going to have to hold off a little bit and go back to some Sundays or maybe a Wednesday or something like that. Because I love fishing the Thursday nighters with my kids. It's just a fun deal for me, and we always have a good time with it. So looking forward to fishing those Steven, if you got some information you might want to put up for it or whatever you can, and I'll just post it up here. But looking forward to fishing those. Bob says, how long do the night tournaments go? 4 to 5 hours or all night? So around here, if you fish a Thursday nighter, they are, I think, 6 to 10 or 6 to 10:30. And then the Friday nighters are like, they go to like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, around 6 to 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. The club that I'm fishing, they're going to be doing a couple of their night tournaments go from, I think it was either 6 or 7 o'clock in the afternoon to 4 o'clock in the morning, which you get those stretches, man, where it's like 10 o'clock. I mean, not 10 o'clock. I'm sorry. It's like 2 o'clock and it's just so dead till like close to that time when the sun's going to start coming up. You're just like, holy moly. Steve said theirs on Chickamauga are 4 hours. Man, I couldn't imagine night tournaments on Chickamauga. I bet you that's fun. I mean, some big fish in Chickamauga. Smith's got some big fish too, but not well known like Chickamauga, I think. But I think Smith is kind of like, it's still that hidden gem, though. I mean, a lot of people know about it, but I still think there's a lot of people that don't realize the big bags that are brought in. I mean, we've had several bags right at the Dirty 30. We had Chris Brummett and them. They brought in what he had right at 30 pounds for a BFL. And then you had Chad Green and Johnny Martin that brought in almost 30 pounds for a club tournament. That was right before the Rick Tilley tournament? Or right out, I think it was right before the Rick Tilley tournament that they had, and they caught a big bag. So it's some big bags in there. And there's a lot of tournaments where they might not have brought in a whole lot of weight, but they brought in some 8-pounders, So he said, y'all start those before the sun goes down, Steve. I'm sure they do down there at Chickamauga. A lot of your weeknight tournaments are like start at 6, It's that way you can get off the water. So yeah, 22-1, 8.5 big fish. Yeah. Bo Grosvenor won that one. Yeah, this is a time of the year, man, where them big bags are called. I mean, they're going to start tapering off a little bit. It's going to be that kind of that funk going on, that post spawn funk. So I think you're going to see some of the bags start tapering off a little bit, and then it'll start picking back up with the shad spawn. I know the night tournament they just had the first one out of Indian Point, which Dwayne Lamb and them just purchased that. If you guys didn't know that, for Captain's Quarters, Dwayne Lamb just purchased that and has fixed it up really nice so far, making the big tackle store. And they're going to be running all the Friday nighters out of there. So they just did their first one, and it was like 11 pounds or something. Won it, but you got to think a lot of the night tournaments around here, they're 3 fish limits. They're trying to keep down with fish kill, and that way you take care of the fish a little bit better with 3 fish. So when you start seeing 11 pounds and 12 pounds and all that stuff, just remember that's 3 fish limits around here when we're posting stuff. So, but yeah, so I mean, that's gonna be picking back up here. We're gonna have some videos coming out here soon for some night fishing, some how-tos and things to look for and all that, and the shad spawn. And so make sure you tune in for that. People that are just tuning in, Ronnie Moore will be back with us here shortly. He is just helping out with some family obligations right at the moment, and we will have him back on here in just a little bit. We're going to talk about the Rookie of the Year. We're going to talk about forward-facing sonar and all that. So excited to get him back in here and get his take on that really fast, and then we'll probably let him go. But that was one of the biggest things I wanted to get when we talked to Ronnie, was his take on the rookies, the new set of EQ qualifiers that we're looking at right now. If you listen to interviews with Trey McKinney and Tyler Williams and all them guys, and they're talking about the next guys that are going to come in and how good they are. So, I mean, if them guys are really good, and they're already talking about the next set of guys that are going to be coming in. But we got Ronnie. He's back with us here. Let's grab him. All right, man, we got you.
Woo. Look who's here. Come here. Would you come here? She just ran out of room. Come here.
She wants to be on camera like Daddy.
Oh, she does. She is. She loves. Can you say hi? Can you say hi?
You like bass fishing like your daddy?
Oh, you can't hear it, can you?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Can you say hi?
Hi.
Go get mama. Oh, you just said, hey. Oh,
But
sorry.
no, you're fine, man. You're fine. I love seeing the family stuff.
You can now say you had 3 guests on the podcast today.
That's right.
Or three total people.
Special guest. We had a super special guest.
Cameo.
Well, let's talk real quick. Let's talk about, you got the Rookie of the Year going on right now. This is a lot of hype is around this class for the Rookie of the Year, because you got guys that are in this that I'm not going to say all of them are true rookies. You know what I mean? They've been fishing for a long time, but for this series, they're rookies. But, you know, every once in a while you'll have guys that will come from the FLW over. They've been fishing FLW for many years, but a lot of these guys are true, like coming out of the opens, didn't fish a lot of that stuff.
Very young, but we just start fishing. We're in the era now of AAU basketball and travel baseball. These fishermen are starting so much younger that they can say, I've fished for a decade trying at this in their own, you know, level of competition. And now they're only 24, you know, or whatever the case may be. Or Trey, who's just old enough to drive, you know.
Baby. He's still a baby.
Yes.
He's even started shaving yet, you know?
Yeah, he wins it with 130 pounds at Lake Fork, and then all of a sudden the next event he's got some scruff, and we're like, what is that? He grew up right before our eyes.
That's right. So Bass, I think, got what they wanted out of this. You know what I mean? When it came to, you know, it used to be, for guys that didn't know, if you placed in the top, I can't remember, was it top 3 out of each division?
It's been top 3. It's been top 5. It's been each division and overall. It's kind of changed. Back in the day, it was if you won one, you know, like you got to be in there. So it's changed over the last, you know, 50 or the 19 years of the Elite Series. The Opens has changed overall, but with the need for filling boats fields, you know, like we could have 250 boats and have just one division, but we would have 300 on the wait list. So why didn't we make another division? So we did. And then you have wait lists on those divisions. So let's make a third division. And then we do all that. And then it's like, we have to now weed out who is a regional guy that would say no, because for a while there, Josh, like we'd have 15 spots go from the opens to the elites, but we'd only have 11 or 12 except every year. We would have a local to the James River guy who would do really well at the James. He would do well at Lake Norman, and he would do okay in Florida. And all of a sudden he's an elite bid, and he would say no because he wants to stay home, or he has a good job, or he wants to do that. So you had to start turning the focus of, we have really good anglers that are showing up, but we have to have really good anglers that are committed to this, because we often saw a division angler, if you struggled, you dropped out.
Yeah.
These guys do not want to go back to the opens. They're not going to drop out after 3 or 4 events. They're going to be in it for the long haul. And so I think that that's going to allow you to make a better business for yourself. You're going to be, you know, and I think that 9 spots or 10 spots with the nation spot, that's a 10%. You know, you have 100 people and you have 10 coming in. I think that that's a good percentage. Could we have more come in? For sure. Would there be too much turnover? Probably. And so this allows some people to really be battle tested. And so that's the same reason why we put more payout into the opens this season, more payout for the AOY list. So those who do qualify get a chunk of change more and don't have to worry about it. You know, if you win AOY in this year's opens class, you get $45,000 for winning AOY, which is your entries for next season. So you've already done well enough, making checks to be number 1. But then, boom, that's all gravy, because you just got your entries for next year taken care of, and you're not going into it as struggling as much as others have. So we're hoping to do that and then roll more into the Elite Series. And I think the opens are correct, and I think they can be even better in our format. And that I'm just hinting at something that could be coming, you know, in the next year or 2, you know.
Yeah.
I say with the best intentions behind this, BASS is often slower than other leagues to make changes, but we make changes knowing they're sustainable so that we don't have to undo the changes we just made, because it worked for a year, but that's not ideal. So we've been thinking about the EQs for like 3 years before they rolled out, and then as soon as they rolled out, Hank Weldon didn't just, rest assured we're going to keep this for 5-10 years. There's already work on how can we make this better. Payouts increase, AOI money increases. And then what are some drawbacks to it? How do we keep people all year? Or how do we incentivize, how do we give a spot for the Elite Series guys who may not requalify? They have to have a home that's still a good enough job instead of going to another league to fish another trail that has, higher money than the opens. And so there's always going to be that, how do we be better? Which is why I appreciate the company I work with, because that's always the goal. No matter what people say online, they have no idea.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. A lot of keyboard warriors about it, But I look at it and I'm like, man, these guys, like you said, that Bass is getting what they want. They got somebody that's going to be established into it. They're all in. They put all their chips into this. They're not going to be all in and just get there and say, I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? So they're all in. What my question was talking about, the elites just a bit ago, was where does it drop at points wise that are out for the year? Because me and James was going over this, and there's some big names that's down at the bottom. And I know some of them are champions. They've won AOI or they've won a classic or something like that. But where's the cutoff? Like, hey, these guys didn't requalify.
So top 70 in points each year are safe, automatically safe. You could have had the worst average in BASS history and you're about to get cut, but you finish 69th or 68th or 70th on the dot. You're safe. You're back next year. Guaranteed top 70, you're safe. And then out of those 33 below there, because our field's 103, you'll have, kind of anybody who's like an Elite Series. Well, hold on. Let me just get this order right. Top 70, you're safe. And then below that, it goes based off average, your career average. So when you look at 90th is Seth Fighter right now, 96, Gerald Swindle, like Joey Cifuentes, 101. Joey's going to have a harder time because he got 5th in AOI and 101st. His AOI average is going to be 55, which is going to be, if it was to end today, that's normally the number that you're close to get to probably get relegated and not requalify. So 55 average is pretty good out of 100 something, for your career. So those guys who are year 2, 3, 4, their average is crazy affected harder. Mm-hmm. But if Joey gets in the top 70, he's all good. If he gets into 80th, his average is going to be good enough. He's fine. But right now, as it stands, I don't know what happened to Joey from last year to this year, but he'll figure it out. And so you those 30 anglers now all get reshuffled based on AOI average. You could be 71st in points, but the first person to not requalify, if that makes sense. If the 30 people that are below 70th, you're the worst average AOI finish out of those, even though you were 1 point from staying safe, you could be the first one gone. And that's why some of those guys at the last event last year at St. Lawrence did enough work to stay in by one spot, but they would have been gone. They would have been one of the first 5 gone, type of thing.
Yeah.
Then if the average, you worry if there's a guy who's, let's just say he's the first one gone. Let's just say Rick Clunn. Does he have a Legends exemption left? Yes, he would come back on that. So you take him out of the list, and then it goes up 1 and 1 and 1. And so that's kind of the way it goes. It gets tricky there with people retiring. Like last year, we had people, we had Micah Frazier step away. We had Keith Poche leave to go back to the BPT. You had Bradley Hallman step away. And so it was one of those things where all of a sudden, like that, people who were out 2 or 3 spots they got back in, but no one knew. And that's why we don't make the lists, because, and people always they want to know who's out, who's in. That's not for you to know. No offense. It's not for anybody to know, because the second we say this guy's out and someone retires before the November deadline and then he's back in, well, the whole industry knows this guy was the first one out. Are they going to sign up to sponsor somebody that may be gone in 1 year? Like, they don't know if you're last man to make the elites or you're the first one through the door because your average is so good. You could take the time and do all the averages for sure, but you don't know each scenario. So we do that. We keep it private so that anglers have the ability to still operate and get sponsor deals without feeling like, well, I did bad enough, it's publicized now, and no one's going to want to invest in me because of that, and so I think that's why we keep it private, and it's pretty good right now, and a lot changes. We had up to the day, up to the final day last year when people started deciding what they were doing. So ever changing, but man, the opens, the rookies this year, you got to bring it. I said to win rookie of the year going forward, you're going to have a shot at AOY. You're going to have to be close to winning AOY to win rookie of the year. We're seeing that now year after year after year.
And it's just crazy to look through, and you go through and you look at the rookie of the year and you look at the AOY of the year, and you're just looking like, golly almighty, man. Like there's some guys that are back in there competing, and I look at a lot of these guys that are established in the elites, and I feel like some of these guys didn't take the time on the off season to say, with the forward-facing sonar, for instance. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like some of these guys, I don't think they was expecting this to go like it did, and some of these guys having just bad finishes. And I know, man, it's year by year. We all have those years where
some of it's lost fish, man. And that's something we always just think, oh, they didn't find the bite. But that's the variable in our game is like, there's guys who had the bites and they lost them. I was talking to Brad Watley on the phone today. He was 94th in AOY after the first two events. And the first two events are the closest two events we'll ever have to his home in East Texas. We had Fork and we had Toledo. And he gets 15.5 pounds on day one at Toledo, sitting in a good spot, catches 2 fish for 6 pounds on day 2, and finishes terribly. And then Lake Fork doesn't have a good one. And, he lost so many fish on day 2. That's why he didn't have a limit. And so you think about, like, was he frustrated? For sure. Did he lose confidence? Probably not, because he found them and was around them and was getting bites, but just losing them. Yeah. And it's the perspective of just keep going. And so he would have probably 2 top 10s and a cut made if he didn't lose so many fish on a day and have a fluke thing happen. Same thing. He was missing, or they were not getting his bait day one at the St. John's. He comes in with 2 bass. One's a 6-pounder, one's a 2.5. And then the next day, he drops 20 pounds. The next day, he drops 31. So it's one of those things, like, the stats, for me, I can understand the stats and have context to it. Some people are like, man, he's just not catching this year. Like, Fighter's been posting every single tournament, just losing key fish. And he's just like, when you're hot, you're hot. And when you're not, you're not. Like, and he's like, I have not, and so I think that's another variable that we forget about. Like, did they invest the time? Sure. Do they go look for it and miss out on something that they would have found years ago? For sure. But I always like to say these veterans had more opportunity and more ability with the technology, and they let it pass them by to a little bit extent. And that's not me being harsh on them. It's not just, oh, these kids, they got unlimited budgets and they grew up with it. Homie, I caught schooling fish on Panoptics in 2016. That's a long time ago that this technology has been around, and people had it and didn't think it was game changing. And we're now seeing how much it can affect stuff, or we're learning a lot about fish that we didn't know about.
Yeah.
Or we knew.
Yeah. I had the opportunity when I went out to, for the Lake Hartwell Classic, a couple years ago, and I had the opportunity to ride around with Mark Daniels. And it was before what they call the live scope. It was just a regular Panoptics or whatever. Yep. And he was like, man, look at these spotted bass under the dock, and he shows me this, and I'm like, holy crap, this is phenomenal. But then, like a couple years later, I'm like, man, it's like no one's talking about it. Like I'm like, there's no one using this, but then they've been using it. I think a lot of these guys are trying to keep it hush hush. They're not talking about how good it is. And then now all of a sudden the technology is changing, and Garmin put a lot more money and emphasis in marketing it more, and you're seeing
updates and upgrades, and
yeah. So, but like say too, you also think as a veteran fisherman that you can go up there and catch 21, 22, 23 pounds flipping pads and fishing shallow, and it still can be done.
100%.
It's just those fish get beat on so much that these guys are finding new fish that aren't. But eventually it's going to change, I think.
Yeah, and I think it could come around like you're saying as well. And I think that also, like we saw at the St. John's River, Zona was saying that the biggest community hole in the St. John's River was occupied by 3 guys this week, majority. And that was, all three all 3 made the final day. And how in years past it would have been 25 guys would have tried it or known it was going on, and that maybe people were investing time and looking for something that wasn't going to play. You know, we've seen Rodman play. A lot of guys went and spent both days of practice in Rodman, and then all of a sudden only one guy makes the top 10 out of there. So it just wasn't happening. And so I think that people will do that, but you now have to be absolutely perfect if you're up shallow. You cannot have you can't go 5 for 10 on catching and landing fish. Like, you got to be perfect. You can't let up. And then also, if you're going to be a one-trick pony these days on the Elite Series, you're going to have to sorry, I'm getting a text on my computer. It just took my focus. If you're a one-trick pony these days, like if you're a jig guy or you are a chatterbait guy, you have to be the best one-trick pony in that if you're going to set yourself apart, because you're just going to end up blending in. But we're going to see those guys that still know how to catch them the old way just good enough, and that's Hackney and Christie, Drew Benton. Like, that is where we'll see the next superstar come from, is the guys who know how to catch them instinctually, old school if you want to call it, but they know, and when it's time, they put the technology to use as well. The Stetson Blaylocks of the world, I think those guys are the ones that are going to be able to win out going forward, and they can not dominate. I'm not going to say we're not in the era of domination, but like, I think I think the opportunity to be successful is more widespread now, and people may be mad about that, but
yeah,
you know, I'm only 30. I can't have 30 years of it's like a job. We're expecting these 22-year-old rookies to have 22 years of experience on their resume before they come to their job at the Elite Series. That's just not the way it works anymore. No. If you got it, you got it. And we're going to see it all play out.
You might know this guy. It was amazing.
Hey.
Guys in Salt Springs, I learned a lot.
Yes, my dad was actually that's my dad, Ron Moore. That he was the boat driver, camera boat driver with Kyle Jesse, another one of my brothers, at the Harris Chain and St. John's. And so my parents are officially old. I know I was born in Florida. They lived down there prior, but they're officially snowbirds because it's too cold. It's too cold in the states above Florida, so Florida's where they'll be. So, yeah, he got to be camera boat driver for the 8 days of the Elite stuff, and it's cool to see him in the background of some shots. But, yeah, I was just shot a podcast that'll go up tomorrow, the Bassmaster podcast with Kyle, and we were talking about how crazy that area looks with the craters, the tilapia beds, how clear it is, yet how many pleasure boaters were in there. And it's just like, we forget that they don't just spawn in February in Florida. They spawn from, if you're at Okeechobee, they spawn around Thanksgiving till June. You'll catch a fish shallow and may not expect anything. But they're probably spawning as well. Like some of them are.
Yeah. Yeah. Last topic here, and then I'll let you go. I know we're getting late. Let's talk about, and you don't have to go into like full detail, because I know there's a lot of conversation with bass and all that stuff, but where do you see forward facing sonar going, or where would you like to see it go when it comes to where maybe it's how much they have on the boat, or how far the transducer, they got saltwater transducers that can shoot further out, or I mean, where do you see some changes that could happen, or been talked about, or I don't know what you can say and can't say, but.
Oh, well, I am, we have like a 10-person forward facing sonar committee, and I was volunteered by my boss to be a part of that. I was like, ooh, the fate of the world and the universe. You don't want to give Ronnie more of that red button. I don't know if that's the deal. And then he was like, so I was like, I think I'm going to pass. And he's like, the next day I get an email that says, thanks for being a part of the committee. Mike said that you would be the one. I was like, okay, I guess I'm in. So we've had meetings. So it drives me up a wall when people are like, Bass isn't going to do anything about it. I'm like, well, what am I wasting 2 hours of my week on these meetings?
Yeah,
where we're talking about it and we're providing evidence, or we're providing thoughts on, live programming. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And so, what the live show product is like, conservation on fish populations and state regulations, that's stuff that we're considering. Consumers, what their being tasked with purchasing now these days, or what the, that goes with the limitations. Also safety. We're having a lot more boat accidents the last year or so, and it's whether it's fog based and people are reckless, or it's running no wake zones. It's not all like graph oriented.
Yeah.
But if you do have graphs there and they're high, you're not going to see, as well as you would have back in the day with one graph at the console. And then even like current rules that we have being adjusted, possibly, considerations of, redacting and amending rules that cover a certain topic, like just for instance, like sight fish. When you catch a fish, you're visually looking at it, has to be in the mouth. But where does forward facing sonar fish fall in that realm? I don't think I've ever caught a jerkbait fish in the mouth, whether I was using forward facing or not. Like, it's just like there's certain baits it's hard to. And so we're trying to navigate rules, making it as clear as possible. We don't want to just put rules out there that have gray area. Like, we want to make rules that makes it clearer and better. And so, I even suggested that to Gene Gilliland, our conservation director. I said, instead of have some of these states, because Josh, if we're being honest, if states ban forward facing sonar, I equate it, not to get political, but like, are we going to go turn in our guns? Are we going to go turn in our transducers? How are they going to collect these things that are already out there? You're going to have people sneak in purchases. And is there going to be a game warden at every boat ramp on every lake at 6 a.m. on a Thursday waiting to catch Jim Bob and Susie with their transducer? Or are they going to have it hidden in the locker and then put it on once they're out there? Like, we're not really going to be removing the pressure from these fish because we take it off the boats of 100 elite pros and 200 opens pros. We're not removing the pressure in theory. The amount of fish that we catch in a whole season is minimal compared to every week, every day tournaments, anglers that have it and use it. Also, it's one of those things of, we've discussed and talked about, do you do it for some events and not for other events? And I'm like, well, let's just put it in this perspective. And this is just stuff that I've said publicly beforehand, and then I brought it to the meeting. So I said it in the meeting, but like, it's stuff that's common knowledge as well, if you think about it. But like, if we did a Russian roulette on which tournaments have forward facing, which tournaments don't, let's just say Toledo Bend this year didn't have it, and then Fork did have it. You're going to see Toledo Bend get one with 72, 73 pounds for 4 days. Not a bad weight, but not 100 pounds. Then you're going to go to Fork the next week where they can use it. It's 130 pounds to win. Who in their right mind is driving past Lake Fork to go to Toledo Bend in that situation, to go visit tourism, hosts, bring economy to the lake? You're not going to. So people may say, we're going to watch live if there's no forward facing. But so you're telling me the viewership's going to go up, but it's already really high. And then, but visitations to those lakes is going to go down. So what are we really helping? That would be only a service to us. That would be helping Bassmaster and hurting others. And so you got to consider host lakes. You got to consider time of year on scheduling. I think scheduling is going to be a big thing going forward on how we schedule. But in my opinion, I made a sticky note. I don't have it with me. It's on my desk at work. I had a sticky note that had, don't ban it. And then it had like reasons why, because I'll start going like you see on this podcast, and I'll just I'll miss my bullet points. And so I wrote down some things to consider, and I really was proud of myself on how I delivered them, and how, like, I wasn't trying to win over people there. I was just trying to, these are things we might not have thought about, but I've thought about them a whole bunch because this is my world other than my girls. It's what I revolve around. So I've been in the middle this whole time. Ban it, don't ban it. I've been in the middle, but because people are so aggressive in banning it, you're almost making me align more with not banning it because you're being so outrageous for the anti perspective of it. And so, or the feasibility of it. We're not going to just say Bassmaster said it's bad, and then no one ever, like, how many A-rigs are out there?
Yeah.
Still getting thrown and work. And so it's not a end all be all if Bass makes the decision. But like I've told Chase Anderson, our president CEO, what we do will set the tone for a lot of other people. Whether it's we don't ban it, but we regulate it. We're going to allow transducers on the trolling motor only. You can only have this many inches of graphs on your boat. You can only have 4 units. You can only have this, so that, Jim Bob, like I mentioned at the boat ramp, wants to fish the opens. He doesn't feel like he needs to drop $35,000 in electronics to be able to compete.
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing you don't want, I don't want to come to Josh's local lake for an Elite Series event without forward-facing sonar, and it takes 15 pounds a day to win. And we got a junior series. We got 6th graders and under, and it takes 22 pounds for them to win. Do the best in the world. Like, it's like if everybody shot on a 10-foot basketball goal and ours is 15. Like, that's not gonna look great. And we're gonna have local tournaments looking better than elite tournaments. And so it's a balance and a battle that we're gonna deal with. But I'll say, like, we had a meeting this week where we kind of pitched our thoughts on it, or concerns, or more info on making a determination, because we're running out of time. If you think about it, like, our season's half over almost. We want to have a decision before the season's done. So we want a decision before August. We don't really need the northern swing to tell us what it's going to look like. So we might know by ICAST. We might know by, July sometime or whatever, for that next crop. But yeah, I think that the rookies have gotten a bad rap. I think a lot of guys, Cody Huff, he is one that's probably fits that talent and recognition chart really well, because he is so talented. And he told us a story about a guy at the Classic who wasn't even in the tournament, but he's an Elite Series pro. Said, "Good luck, go scope him up." And then Cody's like, "What does that mean? Like, you think that's all I'm supposed to do?" And he goes and catches him, and he catches 20 pounds on day one, 21 pounds in this much water, and he's 2nd place in the Classic. It's like, go scope him up. Like, what are we doing? So
people are
weird. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, people are very open and opinionated about this stuff, and to the point where they're very angry. I mean, we've done YouTube videos where, most of the time we're throwing drop shots or this, not using live scope. Like, live scope is something we've just really started learning for ourselves, and people still they'll get you for it. You catch if you caught it because you had live scope. I'm like, no, I've caught big fish before. Like, if
one fish comes up and busts the surface at your trolling motor, Josh, do not look down, because the second you bend your neck, they're going to think you're live scoping. You're not allowed to. You better be like this when you're fishing. Just be like this, and they'll be like, "That's such a pure way of fishing." He is just cerebral, and you're like, "What are we doing?"
Yeah,
I saw guys sight fishing at the St. Johns River, and if you put it side by side with, it looks the same. It is the same product.
Yeah, guy sitting there flipping to them.
It's the same. It's the same thing. And so it's mind blowing. They're like, "Well, you're not watching," and I'm like, "Brother, I'm watching every set. I watch more than you guys do. I watch live all day and know who's leading, and I still watch the weigh-in every day. Like, I watch. What are you talking about? I'm watching."
Yeah,
and I don't even have it on my boat, but I don't mind watching it, because it's more fish and it's bigger fish, and it's fish we've never targeted before, and you learn so much. Perspective mode, that's a game changer for the shallow guys. I said, if I was back into tournaments, I would feel very comfortable taking off the current graph I have, getting one graph, and having perspective mode, because I like to fish shallow, and that would help me shallow. That's, I don't need all of it, but everybody feels, and that's why we probably want to put a limit for the consumer aspect of it, is how much do they need to go get. It's a lot of guys put transducers on their motor in the back, and they don't have an idea why. They have no idea why. They did it because somebody else was doing it, and they didn't want to be without. It was FOMO. Their fear of missing out. If that's a deal and I don't have it, then
I can't compete.
Yeah, then I'm missing something, and I can't put it on day 2 of practice. I got to have it on there. And I get it. You're an Elite Series pro. But Jim Bob and Susie in the high school series, they think you need it, and they waste their time doing it, when these Elite Series guys are prepared for every scenario possible, and they do it, So you don't need 52 rods. The elite guys might, because every moment is money. And if you're retying, you're missing, So
that's missing.
And I told that on Luke Duncan's podcast. I said, the only problem I have right now is you take a photo of a BFL angler's boat, an ABT angler's boat, Texas Team Trail, high school series, Opens Pro, and Elite Pro, and you won't be able to pick out which one the Elite Pro's boat is, because they all look the same.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I played high school basketball, and I didn't train like LeBron did, but we're just having a lot of local people training like the Elite Series guys are. So it's a weird deal.
Exactly. And this is the last point I want to make with it is this was always my take on it is if we start banning the technology, okay, where do these companies feel like they need to go now? You know what I mean? Like, where does Lowrance, Garmin, Humminbird feel like, okay, well, where do I need to put my money now? Because I would be scared. Let's say I'm making live scope. Now, granted, I know that if you ban it, you're still gonna have consumers that gonna buy it. Like say the A rig's the same way. People still throw the A rig, but you're not gonna be able to advertise it like they did with the marketing dollars and all that. So where now are they going to say, well, should we really invest in much more technology because it could be banned and we won't be able to push it in these other series because how much more better can you make, if that even sounds right, how much better can you make side imaging? You know what I mean? It's clear it's just like looking at it right now. So do they need to invest more money in that? So, right now everything's going into the forward facing sonar bucket right now. And that's where they're trying to make it clearer, better, and all that. So, I'm looking at this, like where, as a tech guy, I wouldn't want to invest no more in something that's going to help give the advantage because it might be banned in the pro series, Yeah.
And even if we banned it, no one else did, which I don't think any other leagues like talking about it. That's a national league. If we were to do that, we set the precedent, like we say, and the ripple effect, you throw a rock in a pond and it splashes. That's the immediate, we banned it. But the ripple effect in that pond is a state says, well, BASS banned it. And if BASS banned it, then our state is. And then all of a sudden you have technology companies that aren't allowed in states and aren't allowed, and you're like, now we've got an issue where everyone's alienating companies for doing their job really well, And so, I think that it's hard. I think some companies would benefit if it was banned. I think some electronics companies would definitely benefit if it was banned because they could pivot easier. But some that have invested so much in it, you're going to just go to saltwater only. Garmin left the freshwater market. We had Garmins that were shorted out in our 2005 Ranger, 18-foot Ranger. And they were, this big.
Yeah.
And they were shorted out because Garmin, what came standard on Rangers back then in like 05. And then all of a sudden they, they pull out of the freshwater, go to saltwater, find out about this technology or develop it, come back to freshwater and dynamic. So you don't want people leaving us to go to saltwater to come back in years, so I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I'm honored to be a part of it. It is a headache and a half. And whatever we decide, I do not want to undo it next year. Like let's give me a season without this topic,
Yeah, but, that's right.
I will say, and I've said this on Bass Live, I've said it in a podcast elsewhere and stuff. My biggest disappointing thing in this whole era is, do I love them jacking them on a jig and a chatterbait and doing the shad spawn? Heck yeah, that's the deal. Top water, 100%. We all live for that. But all of my heroes told us to never settle, practice harder than anyone else, give the effort, figure it out. They're biting somewhere. You better go figure it out. And now some of those same guys are finishing 75th, and they're either happy they did because they did it without technology, or they have a built-in excuse on the stage every time they didn't catch them. They could have went and live scoped all day long, and they didn't catch them to make the cut, and they could have been like, well, I guess I'll just live scope next event. But people don't know that they were doing that alternate. They just weren't good at it. But they that's their built-in excuse. Anytime you don't catch them now, it used to be, well, I lost the bites, and you're fibbing. You lost a 2.5 pounder. You thought it was a 10 that was going to save your tournament, but no one's caught a 10 on this lake since Nam. So you just made that up. And now all of a sudden we're now it's, everyone's praising you on social because you caught 12 pounds a day at Lake Fork, but you did it the right way according to your fan base. And so you get applauded for it. And never once growing up did we applaud people for finishing below the cut. It was a get them next time. I hope you do better. Not you're my hero because you were inept this week and proud of it. Like that's never been the thing. This is a performance-based sport. I'm not going to ever be happy for an NBA player scoring 8 points a game and he went to practice half the time. No, I want the guy who's getting 17 a game and he's going to practice every day. Like, so I just don't want to see some guys' legacy turn into, Randy Blockett, if we're being honest, just complaining, because that's not what this is about. It's not.
Yeah.
It's for the first time ever, we have something that can retire people in our sport. We have been the only sport in the world where you can do it from 19 to 80 and you were fine with your knowledge. Now our sport's adapting, and you got to be able to be a 7-foot center and go out and shoot a 3-pointer now. You can't just be a low post guy unless you're the best low post guy. That's the way it is.
Yep.
And my favorite player in the world is the best passer in the league, and he's a 7-foot Serbian. Like, he is not your prototypical, but because he knows how to do that. And so I just want us to continue to get better. And boy, will it be, how dominant could you be if you pair tech and the knowledge you had for 30 years? There's still a price. You can't put a price on having that knowledge. And so, that's my monologue.
Yeah, well, man, I really do appreciate it. It was good talking with you. I'm glad you came back. I know I said the interview could be 30, 40 minutes, but then we started digging deep into some stuff, and I do appreciate you coming back and talking with us. And like I say, I appreciate the opportunity to have this interview. It just means a lot. So, but I guess normally I tell the pros good luck the rest of this year. I guess I'll tell you that because you got a lot of weight on your shoulders for things for next year. And but I do enjoy watching live and all your stats. And I'm like, man, how did a guy know that? Like, that's good stat. So, but anyways, man, God bless you. I hope you have a phenomenal week, and looking forward to watching you on live the rest of this year.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Josh. And we'll be live at Logan Martin for the next Open. So we have nothing this weekend. I get to sleep in and get some breakfast with the girls at our favorite joint. And then next week we have Logan Martin, and then we have Lake Murray, and we'll have about a month off after that. And so we'll take a break then. But super cool, and I still appreciate it. Thanks for messaging me and having me on. The same reason Mark Zone and Tommy Sanders gave me the time of day as a 15-year-old is the same reason why I'll go on any podcast, talk to anybody, shake anybody's hand, sign any autograph, talk to any kid, because that kid could be pushing me out of the job in a couple of years, like I'm trying to do with Tommy. Like, I'm like, yo, Tommy, man, why don't you just go home, man? You don't golf enough, Tommy. Why don't you go golf, man? No. So I love it. Appreciate it, Josh.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Bye. All right, guys. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that interview. I know it's getting late. We've had some people come in, come out. If you haven't yet, hit the share button. After the show's done, please share it. Let's get it out there. And it's some good topics that we're talking about tonight. And I know we haven't done many of these shows. And I keep saying I want to do more. And just as all you guys know, and as Ronnie was talking about just a while ago, it's just been family and trying to line guests up, because like it's so many events going on. It's either an MLF or an elite, and I'm gonna be honest with you, trying to get some of the MLF guys on, especially the top guys that you see on there all the time, really hard to get. So, but it was nice getting Ronnie on. I've been trying. I think we've been talking about this for about 2 weeks now, and this was a goal of mine to get him on. I wanted to work it out perfect, but I wanted to be a couple of tournaments in to kind of go over, especially now where we have an elite rookie class, that's in there right now. And I wanted to see his take on those. And he's just a really smart guy. Like, I mean, if you haven't watched live yet, which I know most of you guys that are in here right now have, just the stats that roll off of this guy's tongue, man, is just phenomenal. And I'm like, I love bass fishing. I love it a lot. And I wished I could have a quarter of the knowledge that he has with it. My brain don't work like that. I can remember a spot that me, Chris, or James, or Alan, or any of my buddies that went and caught this fish, when we caught it, what time of the year, and what color jig or shaky head or whatever. But when it comes to numbers, man, I can't remember nothing. You know what I mean? I'm doing good to remember my birthday sometimes. So, but Ronnie, I do appreciate you coming on, man. It meant a lot to us. And I appreciate everybody that's tuned in tonight. I'm sorry I didn't get everybody's comment up there. For one, I didn't want to leave it because I was so engrossed in the conversation that I was like leaving stuff up that I didn't want to leave up there. But no, it was good having them on. And I like I say, I didn't get to everybody's questions or comments. and I do apologize that I was trying to go through most of them, but yeah, so we got a lot going on. I know I was talking about the tournament, but y'all going to see that video come out here soon, where me and Chris fished that. James's video is up right now on the Yupin. I can't remember how you say that lake now. But anyways, he caught 2 good fish on there. James is he's still on a little struggle bus. He's learning new rivers. He's not used to that kind of system down there, so he's learning it. And it's a tough fishery. I fished it a couple times with him down there. Everything looks really good. So it's hard to really kind of break it down even more. And MLF guys, they'll be in that area, the Chowan River, here in a couple months. Excited to see how that's going to go with them guys. I see some guys already getting their pre-fishing in on there. But like I say, it's the content James does and we do, I feel is like really good. And we've had the opportunity to meet some people out on the lakes that have complimented us on our content, and they really like it. So we're trying to make it to where it's like you guys are on the boat with us, you know. And I know some tournaments we don't talk a lot just because we're so engrossed on it. But it is fun just doing just the fishing content and getting out there and having a good time, learning new techniques. I want to do a show next, or a YouTube video next of me just fishing all day with glide baits, because I'm not that great at it at all. To be honest with you, I suck at it, and I want to learn it. And like for me, throwing a jig, that's how I had to learn to throw a jig, was take just my jig box out in a bag of trailers and flip a jig for like 2 or 3 times out. You know, I mean, just, you know, sometimes you're not catching nothing, and then all of a sudden you start putting it together and getting that confidence of what that bite feels like with the jig, and the color combinations and stuff like that on each lake. So that's where I want to get with the glide baits right now. I want to be able to, I know you can't catch a lot of fish, but I want to go out there and really start catching some fish on this glide bait. So I might be doing a video soon of just glide bait fishing, but I'm going to try to get the family out there this Sunday, and we're going to go do some bed fishing. I want to get the kids on some big fish, and they're coming in, and I got some good spots where I can normally find a few. So that's we're going to be out Sunday. I do appreciate everybody that's tuned in. I appreciate all of our customers that we've had. The business is doing really well, and we can't thank you guys enough. Like, just the support that we got from you, and the, you know, sharing our posts and sharing our products when we come out with new products and all that stuff. Our team guys, I mean, it's been a phenomenal year, and we're doing really well. And I appreciate everybody for all the support. It means so much, because like I said, we would not be here if it wasn't for you guys. So I really appreciate it. But other than that, guys, I will talk to you later. Look, there he is there. Great show tonight. Thank you, Ronnie. It means a lot for you coming on tonight. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you checking us out on iTunes, please give us a rating if you like the show. Hopefully it's a good rating. I don't want a bad rating. And like I say, like and subscribe, hit the thumbs up button. You know what to do. Do it all. But I'll talk to you later, guys. Y'all have a blessed week, and we will see you next time.